it's Saybak here. Welcome back to my podcast. Today I'm going to be continuing the fourth book in the Harry Potter series, Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire. So, where were we? Right, the Quidditch match had just begun and Harry was finally watching his first ever actual proper Quidditch match. And not just the ones that his houses play. So, the quaffle was thrown into the air and they were off. First, Mullet had got the quaffle and then Troy, Morin and Dimitrov got it. Back to Mullet and Troy got it again, Levesky got it and then Morin got it. Then it went back to Troy and he scored. So basically Troy scored the first quaffle of the game. And that was really exciting. So it was 10-0 Ireland. Harry was really surprised because he had heard what Bagman had said, but he didn't understand it because he didn't see anything. Because he was trying to get every single detail of the game. So he had made sure that it was not too fast or the right amount, right speed, and it was actually slower. So then Hermione was standing up and doing a wave and she yelled, "Harry, if you're not going to watch your normal speed, you're not going to keep up with the match. So you might as well just turn it back to the normal speed." And Troy was just practically dancing on a broom because this is a really big deal. If this was a house cup or something, not that big of a deal. You're just supporting your house and that's great. Go Gryffindor, go Slytherin. But no, this is a whole country. It's the whole of England depends on it. The whole of Ireland depends on it. But in this situation, it's Ireland and Bulgaria. So this is actually really, really important to their country. So yeah. And then across the field, the Velas, who were really, really, really pretty things, were watching. And yeah, Harry, a while ago, not too long ago, he was just staring at the Velas just like Ron. And he was just going to walk onto the pitch and fall off the barriers and just keep on walking to the Velas. Unless Hermione had told him to stop, which she did. So Harry's not on the pitch. And then Bulgaria was back with the quaffle. It was to Dimitrov, then Levesky, then Dimitrov again, and Ivonova. So Bagman yelled all that out. I do not know how these people actually keep track of these things. If it was a football match, the ball isn't going to be going around so fast, but this isn't football. This is Quidditch, probably the best sport in the world, if it existed. Okay, so then, a bunch of stuff happened, and the quaffle was back at Levesky, then Dimitrov, Morin, Troy, Mullet, Ivona, and it just went to a bunch of people, and it came back to Morin, and he scored. Morin scored the second round of the game. And the Irish supporters were really, really they could barely hear the shrieking of the Vela. That's how loud it was. And it was so loud that to make sure that they weren't that the stadium didn't get deaf, everyone asked them to cover their ears. And then, basically, let me just tell you a fun fact. The Bulgarian seeker is Crumb. And if you didn't know this, I don't know if I mentioned it, but Fred and George had made a bet with Bagman that Bulgaria's seeker, Crumb, Victor Crumb, will catch the snitch, but Ireland will win. So that was the bet that they made. And just to make it clear, the Weasleys, Harry and Hermione, are not supporters of Bulgaria. They're supporters of Ireland, not Bulgaria. But Ron really likes Crumb as an individual, but not as an Ireland Quidditch player. So yeah, so I just wanted to make that clear. And the Island Seeker's name is Lynch. It's not like a girl name. It's just their surname. So then Crumb did the Ronxy feint, not the F-A-I-N-T, the F-E-I-N-T. So basically that's when you the seeker soars down, pretending that they found the snitch, and then the other opposing team seeker also goes after them, but then the seeker who soared down first does the Ronxy feint, and he just gets out of the way. Then the second seeker crashes to the ground. So Crumb did that, and all of the island supporters were like, "That's a feint. He fainted." Not that type of feint, but they were super mad, and they thought that this is actually supposed to be a foul, but it's not. It's actually a really good tactic. So yeah, and then just not long after quite a few goals were scored. Get it? Scored. Anyways, after a few more goals were scored, Crumb did again. He saw Snitch on the other side of the pitch, but he went right where he was, down. Lynch crashed, and he flew over and got the snitch. And then Charlie asked Harry and practically all the Weasleys, and Hermione, of course, "Where's the snitch? Where's the snitch?" And if you didn't know, Crumb's nose was actually really bleeding after getting hit by a bludger, which also happened. And his nose was really bleeding. And then Harry was like, "It's all over him. Crumb's got it. They got the snitch." But then Crumb might have gotten the snitch, but the thing is, the snitch just adds 150 points. It's not like the House Cup, where if you get the snitch, you practically just win the whole game. Because there, it's until 150 points. Whoever gets 150 points first, whether it's in scores with quaffles or catching the snitch, it doesn't matter. Just get to 150 points and you win. But here in the World Cup, it's not just a school game. It's actually serious. So they actually have to play it as long as they want, which is actually why why Molly Weasley didn't come, because if the match was going to take more than a few days, then she was going to stay there and do all the shopping. So that's probably what she was doing at this time. I'm not sure, but yeah, probably. And then in the end, Ireland actually won, because it was Bulgaria 160 and Ireland 170. So basically, this is really weird. But Bulgaria scored 10 points with quaffles and then 150 with the snitch. But then Ireland scored 170 only with quaffle hoop scores. How did Bulgaria only get 10 quaffle scores? Were they really that bad? And then Bagman shouted, "Ireland wins!" And everyone from Ireland just started cheering so much. It was really, really loud. I do not know how the muggles didn't hear it. Probably late at night, but still, how did they not wake up? So yeah, that's what happened. And the match was great. Ireland won, which was the team the Weasleys, Harry and Hermione were supporting. Once again, making it clear. And yeah, it was just great. So they got to that little tent, practically a house. I think the house was literally, no offense to the Weasleys, but I think it was probably better than the ones that they actually lived in. No offense to the Weasleys, but I mean, come on, Arthur. You work in the ministry. No offense to the Weasleys. So they got into their tent and they went to sleep. Then in the middle of the night, Harry was, by the way, another thing, Hermione and Ginny sleep in a different, smaller tent. The boys all sleep in one tent, because it would just be weird if they all slept in one tent. So yeah, they slept in a different tent, and Harry and Ron were just woken up with the really, really loud noise outside. And Mr. Weasley was like, wake up, we've got to go. And then Ron was like, what is happening right now? And I'm pretty sure Harry was thinking the same thing. And they probably just thought that, oh, it's just the Irelands who are just celebrating a lot because they're excited. But no, it wasn't. Because I just want to tell you something. It was not the Irelands. It was louder. It wasn't the islands. It was definitely not Bulgaria because they lost and they wouldn't be doing that either way. It was Death Eaters. Okay, you probably don't know what Death Eaters are. Or do you? Okay, if I didn't mention it, Death Eaters are basically like the followers of Voldemort. I'm not saying you know who. They're the followers of Voldemort. And they were at the Quidditch World Cup. So that was really weird because I'm pretty sure Death Eaters probably like to watch Quidditch, but I'm pretty sure they were there for a different reason. No, I don't think Death Eaters are sent in troops just to go after one 14-year-old boy. Definitely not for Harry. But they were just there, and also there were like pretty much all like a bunch of wizards there. So Hermione, Harry and Ron met outside the 3 tents, and Arthur came and he said, Fred, George, you're in charge of Ginny. Charlie, Bill and Percy, come with me. We have to go and do some like ministry work, I guess like defeating Death Eaters, because all of them had graduated, but Fred and George just did the owls. So they were in charge of looking after Ginny, but not only Ginny, also Hermione, Ron and Harry. So yeah, then those 6 set off, but then with all of the crowd, like all the witches and wizards scared and running for their lives, they like got split up. So it was just the golden trio, because Harry, Ron and Hermione, and Fred, George and Ginny. And I do not think that they noticed that the 3 of them were gone until really later on. So they were trying to go to the Portkey, which was in the woods kind of. So they were just like really just searching everywhere. And then once Harry, Ron and Hermione noticed, oh wait, where are Fred and George? They got like really scared because there were wizards and witches bumping everywhere. And now that they knew that they couldn't find the older 2 kids, they could be separated in the middle of themselves. So they tried to stick together and tried to push through the crowd. And then they saw the family, the Roberts family, who basically owned the campsite. And the mother was turned upside down so that okay, this is really inappropriate, but I have to tell you all the facts. So that her skirt fell down. And that was like really disgusting. And this was just for like Death Eater's pleasure. And even the 2 kids were raised into the sky. Like, mate, they're like, what, 10 years old? And they're muggles. Well, that's probably the reason they did that, because Death Eaters like practically hate muggles and muggle-borns. So, Harry, Ron and Hermione knew that they could not even see a glance of Hermione, because they felt like the second they saw her, they would know that she's a muggle-born and they would go after her. And if they saw Harry Potter, I mean, that just gives them more reason to go after the Golden Trio. So they tried to go as far away from where the Death Eaters were as possible, because they were basically like all gathered up in one little area. And they ran so fast, and then Harry's scar just started hurting, and he basically just fainted in a way. Then when he woke up, he was like completely isolated in like a desert basically. Like nobody was there. Luckily no like bodies were just lying on the ground. So he was pretty sure that everyone like escaped. But he couldn't even see Hermione and Ron. So then he got really worried because he couldn't find his 2 best friends who were right next to him when he fainted. He thought they were probably just like pushed away from the crowd, away from him. And then in the end, they couldn't find him. But then in the really, really far away distance, he saw a really weird man. And he cast like a skull, a green skull with a snake coming out of his mouth. That was like really, really creepy. And then he like blinked a few times and he tried to get up, and then he saw that the man was gone and nothing was there. And then Hermione and Ron came running to him and yelled, Harry, we found you. We've been looking for you for ages. Are you okay? Said Hermione. And like Ron was also really worried and his face was like completely red. Harry didn't know if that was blood or if he was just blushing, but it was completely red, or if he was just like really scared. And so Harry was reunited with his 2 best friends, and he luckily knew that they were alive. And then Ron said, we couldn't find like my parents or Fred, George and Ginny. So we just tried to look for you because we thought that if we 3 just stick together, we might get out of this alive. Are you okay? Like, what do you see? Who's that man who cast whatever that is in the sky? Harry had no idea what Ron was talking about, but he looked like really worried when he saw what was in the sky. Then, so basically, you know how when you yell Avada Kedavra, like green light comes, like a really bright green light? That was like kind of the color that the dark mark was. But Harry, of course, didn't know what the dark mark was, and he hadn't even heard of it until now. And he actually didn't hear it until now either. So he was going to hear it a little later on. So yeah, the dark mark, which Harry didn't know about, was in the sky. Luckily, Hermione and Ron were there by his side, but it was like a really, really scary and creepy situation. And then red sparks just came in the sky, and Harry, Ron and Hermione held onto each other and ducked down to make sure that the spells that were being cast didn't hit them, because they had no idea what it was. It could literally have been like the torture spell or something, which Harry also does not know about yet. So yeah, they ducked down, holding onto each other, and then Arthur Weasley came running in and said, Stop, that's my son, don't you dare hurt my son. And he grabbed onto Harry, Ron, and Hermione and were like, Are you okay? What are you doing here? And then Crouch, Barty Crouch Sr., he just stormed in and pointed his wands at the three of the kids who were 14 years old and said, You have found at the scene of the crime. Which one of you did it? Which one of you cast the dark mark? And Harry was like, What? What dark mark? There's nothing here. We didn't do anything. I don't even have my wand. By the way, Harry dropped his wand while he fainted. And I'm pretty sure Hermione and Ron didn't find that either. And then what happened next was really weird. Arthur said he's trying to protect, of course, his son and his two best friends, who he knew would never do anything like that. And then he said, Crouch, are you mad? These are 14-year-olds. How would they know how to cast such dark magic? And this is Harry Potter. He is Voldemort's enemy. Why would he be working with him? And yeah, Crouch just didn't believe him, and he saw Winky in the distance. If you don't know, if I didn't mention, Winky was somebody an elf, a house elf, who was, sitting next to Harry in the cup finals, and she was really scared of the height, actually, but Crouch made her save a seat for him. And she was a house elf, just like Dobby, but she didn't want to be free. She loved working for Crouch, because if she was set free, she had really nothing to do and nowhere to live or anything, like Dobby did. Dobby now worked in the school kitchens. Fun fact. And yeah, so Crouch stormed over to Winky and grabbed the wand in her hand, and he yelled at her, Why are you holding this wand? You're a house elf. House elves are not supposed to cast magic spells. And, excuse me, why are you standing right under the dark mark? You cast it, didn't you? He yelled at Winky, the practically shivering and trembling with fear house elf. And Hermione stormed over to Crouch, to where Crouch and Winky were standing, and she was like, How can you blame her for that? She said as she pointed to the dark mark. And then Crouch was like, She's not supposed to be holding a wand in the first place. And that too, she's standing right under the dark mark, which she obviously casted. So then Hermione was really outraged, and she was like, You made her sit at the top of a Quidditch pitch, and you know that she's scared of heights. And how could she even cast the dark mark? What if she just saw the wand there and picked it up? Harry and Ron came racing over to where they were standing, and Harry was like, Wait a minute, that's my wand. And then Crouch was like, I do not understand. Harry Potter cast the spell? Because he had actually checked what the last spell was. And then he said, No, I didn't cast the spell. I dropped my wand when I fainted because my scar hurt. Your scar hurt? Said Arthur. Well, Harry gave him a look like, We'll talk about it later. And then, what happened next? Right, So basically, Crouch and Winky had a really big fight. But of course, Winky couldn't really fight because she had no say in this. And she was just like sitting there, trembling with fear. And then Crouch said, "You were found at the scene of the crime with the one that cast the spell. And you were seen holding it when you're not even supposed to be holding wands, whether you found them on the floor or not. This means clothes." And then Winky was like, no, anything but clothes. Just please, not clothes. Because as I said, she was not like Dobby. She didn't want to be set free. Because working for Crouch somehow in her eyes was not torture, like how Dobby saw working for the Malfoys was. So he wanted to be set free, but Winky didn't. So she was really sad when Crouch said that he's going to give her clothes, which, if you don't know from the second book, means that you don't work for them anymore. Percy, Bill, and Charlie came running in, and they had heard everything Crouch had said. Hermione was, of course, outraged with what Crouch was doing, and she yelled, "Wait, how can you give her clothes for something you don't even know that she did? I mean, isn't there a way to check who had done it? And Harry, you saw someone who cast that mark, right?" Harry nodded, but he was still really scared because he saw how Crouch had yelled at Winky. And then he nodded, and then Hermione was like, "See, it wasn't Winky. Winky can't even cast a spell." And then Percy said, "But Hermione, she was still found with the wand. I mean, as you heard probably, house elves aren't supposed to be found with wands because they can't cast spells, obviously." And Hermione's face was completely red with anger. She was really outraged with Winky getting clothes when she knew that it probably wasn't even her fault. So they, luckily, were safe, but Winky definitely wasn't. Crouch stormed over to his tent with Winky, and Arthur took the rest of the kids to the tent where Fred, George, and Ginny were waiting. That was a really hectic night, and a lot of crazy stuff happened. Harry asked Hermione once he got back to the tent, "What's the dark mark?" And Hermione said, "You don't know? The dark mark is from him. You know who. It's his mark." Harry kind of got it and said, "Maybe that's why my scar hurt." Hermione said, "No, Voldemort doesn't have to be there to cast the mark, but what do his followers do? Only the people who are Death Eaters can cast the mark." That just proved that Winky didn't do it. Why didn't I think of saying that right there? Ron looked at her in a way that said, "How do you know all this stuff? And you know it, but I don't. You're a Muggle-born, and my dad works at the Ministry type of look." Of course, I'm pretty sure Hermione didn't understand all of that from his look, but I'm pretty sure she understood some of it, because later on she said, "Oh, Ron, sometimes I can be smarter than you know, because I actually read books, while you two just sit around thinking about Quidditch. Now, get a good night's rest, because I'm pretty sure that tomorrow we're going to be leaving." And they all went to sleep as Hermione and Ginny walked over to the next tent, and they were, by the way, still in their pajamas. They just put some jeans over them, so they had to kind of get changed, but not that much. Harry and Ron kept talking about, what happened until they just, fell asleep. And the next day, they were ready to go to the Burrow. What a relief that all of them had survived from this terrible attack. Amos and Cedric Diggory, the guys who they had met, by the way, Cedric goes to Hogwarts and he's in his 7th year. So yeah, the guys that they had met, basically how do you say this? They had already left, probably just last night, ever since they saw the attack. And of course, Amos probably helped with it, but they probably left soon after that. And then, they just used the portkey to get back to the Burrow. And it was not that long of a ride, but when Mrs. Weasley, saw them, she practically strangled Arthur Weasley, or Mr. Weasley. And yeah, she was like really worried. And then she saw the twins, and she was really, really, she looked like she was really mad at herself. And she was like, you guys could have died. I heard about everything that happened. And she said, looking to Fred and George, the last things I said to you that you should have done better on your owls when I could have not even seen you the next day. I am so sorry. And Harry, Ron, Hermione, are you guys okay? Is it true that nasty little house elf had cast the dark mark? What wretched little one she is. Crouch probably did her right to fire her, or give her clothes in a way. Hermione was really outraged, and she yelled at Mrs. Weasley, which was not something that she would do. Winky didn't cast the dark mark. She couldn't have. She was just found with the wand. He had no proof that it was her. All we knew that she was holding Harry's wand, which was how the dark mark was cast. And there's literally no evidence that she 100% did it. He just gave her clothes for no reason. Percy and Hermione started fighting about Winky again, and I believe Hermione. I'm sure that Winky didn't cast the dark mark, and I believe Harry. I'm sure that some other guy had did it. I can't believe that Winky had gotten clothes. So just to break up the fight with Hermione and Percy, Mrs. Weasley said that they should go and get packed because she had brought them new robes for a ball that was coming up this year. And when Ron saw his, he wasn't a big fan. Robes are like things that they used to wear to balls, and balls, like dance balls. And, well, how do I say this? His one wasn't exactly great, and in a way it had looked ugly. And the robes weren't like the robes that they wear to Hogwarts, but Ron's actually was. Harry actually thought that it was something like the Hogwarts robes, and it had no lace, which the Hogwarts robe does not have. But Harry's one did have a lace. And then Ron was like, why couldn't I have something like Harry's? And then Mrs. Weasley, obviously favouring Harry. I don't know why she does that. She practically likes Harry more. She practically treats Harry better than her own child, Ron. And then Mrs. Weasley was like, well, we got to have gotten Harry something great because he's our guest, Ron. And also, that's a hand-me-down, so yeah. And then Ron was like, I'm not going to wear this to the stupid ball. And then Mrs. Weasley was like, okay, then you don't need to. You could just go naked. And then she told Harry, make sure you get a few pictures because I would love to see Ron. Of course, Mrs. Weasley didn't know that Harry doesn't bring a camera to school. But he could have practically just made a portrait. Though that would have taken him way too long, and he is not an artist. So yeah, Mrs. Weasley could not stop laughing while looking at his robes. And then Ginny and Hermione walked in, and then when they saw the robes, they burst into laughter. They could not stop laughing. And yeah, it was just a laugh marathon there. Of course, though, if it was actually a marathon, Mrs. Weasley would have won. So, yeah, to summarise what I said in this podcast, the Quidditch Cup and Island 1, Death Eaters had come, and Winky was given socks for something she didn't even do, which was cast the dark mark, but she didn't do that. And they come home and laugh at Ron's robes. So I'll continue this amazing book in the next podcast. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this one. Stay tuned and I'll see you next time. Bye.